Jonathan Reynolds, host of Talent Talks podcast. I'm sitting here in sunny Southern California. Home for me, not really anymore, but I used to live here. And I'm back here with a bunch of business leaders, coaches, consultants. And I'm sitting here with a new friend, Marshall Krupp. It is good to have you on the show.
Nice to be here, Jonathan.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Now, you are a certified EOS Implementer, the Entrepreneurial Operating System Implementer. It's easy, especially on this podcast, to start talking about what we do, which is a bit of an identity thing. But let's get some of these things. I want to hear what it is you do, and then we're going to go deeper and below the surface at some point here. But tell us what you do.
From the simplest perspective is I help entrepreneurs be more successful, more efficient, more effective, more productive, get to profitability, have fun doing what they're doing, enjoying what they're doing, and having an employment relationship with their staff in such a way that they all have a successful time.
Oh, that's great. How did you get into the EOS world?
Well, I was a Vistage chair for 7 years and worked with executives, one-on-one with executives. And I started to realize that, the executives own the company, they run the company, they're the final decision makers of the company, but the real people who run the companies are the middle management people, the leadership teams. And so I left Vistage and joined with EOS because we focus on the leadership teams, which includes the executive of the company, but it's a broader group of people that we're working with.
Right. How long have you been doing this?
With EOS as a certified implementer, 3 years, but I've been using EOS for about 12 to 15 years.
Wow. Okay. That's unusual. I mean, it's a big wave of excitement around EOS that has been over the last few years. Everywhere I go, but I've heard of that. For us, about 11 years we've been running our business on EOS, which has been an absolute lifesaver in so many ways for us. But so transitioning from being a Vistage chair to an EOS implementer, talk about that. Like, what was that like?
Well, as a Vistage chair, you're a facilitator of the group. You're giving advice from time to time, and you're giving them the space to be open, honest, transparent, vulnerable, so they can deal with their issues. And we're dealing with executives from different companies.
Right.
So in the group, we've got different executives from different companies. In EOS, everyone is from the same company, and we're dealing in a session situation where everybody comes in for an entire day. The uniqueness, though, is we have interpersonalities that we have to deal with in terms of the teams. So for that day, we've got those personalities, but then we let them go, and they experience 30 days before the next session. Those personalities start to clash with one another, particularly when they start being open, honest, transparent, and vulnerable.
How often do you meet with a full leadership team?
I meet initially for once a month for 3 months, and then every quarter we have a meeting, and then annually we have 2 meetings.
Okay.
But my relationship with my clients says that they can call me 24/7, even between sessions, and reach me, and I will be of service to them. It's just the right thing to do.
Yeah. Come on, boundaries. We can talk about boundaries in a bit. 24/7 and you'll answer the phone? All right.
24/7 and I will answer the phone.
I'm going to test that. I have a friend who's a well-known author, and he puts his cell number in every one of his books. And I'm like, what is this? He's a New York Times bestseller. And he goes, I always answer the phone. I'm like, how is this even possible? But
well, it's amazing when you tell people that you're available for 24/7, they don't call you. They only call you when it's a really urgent item.
Right.
They don't want to bother you. They don't want to take advantage of the situation, right?
Right.
But when it's a crisis situation, I'm available for them.
Wow, cool. Talk about some of those things. What are kind of the crisis situation? What are some of the big things which are like, wow, this is intense, that you've had to navigate through with clients? Obviously, keep them anonymous, but some of those things that would be relatable to some of our some of our listeners?
So the biggest crisis that any business has, pretty much so all the time, is firing people. Okay? There's the concept of hire slow, fire fast. Most businesses do just the opposite. Yeah. They hire fast and fire slow. And the consequence of firing slow is it has a major impact on the success of the business. So firing is a big issue. Another big issue that a lot of businesses are having right now is predicting. It's hard to predict the future because there's changes in the economy is happening so quickly, changing in the business community is happening so quickly. I mean, a perfect example is AI. I mean, yesterday we weren't even talking about AI. Today, it's probably the most influential condition that's taking place that businesses need to address. So that's an example. The economy, changing things, being able to predict. I think the other area is just change in of itself. Businesses do not like to change. And what I tell my clients all the time, you've got to be ready to pivot at any moment. If you are stuck in the past and you're not willing to pivot, then you're going to lose out on the future. There are opportunities in the future that if you are not ready to pivot for those, you're going to lose out on those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, seeing around corners of what's coming, I mean, that's a really, really tough. We set our annual goals, we set our quarterly rocks, we set all of those things, but things change.
They do.
Right? And how do you navigate the change and stay within the boundaries of the structure and the process? That's tough, especially when you throw in, I mean, AI, the time this was recorded, and this is probably 6 months ago. When you're listening to this, this was recorded 6 months ago. And so I had a guest on here, and they were talking about ChatGPT, and they said, well, when is this going to air? And I said, it's probably about 6 months' time. He said, well, don't include this then, because I'm talking about being on the cutting edge. I don't want people thinking that I'm just catching up.
Correct.
But changing with the times is really tough when you are somebody or a business that's committed to process, and your company annual goals and rocks and things like that. How do you navigate that for your clients who are running on EOS when something happens? You gotta, it's like everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. What's that quote?
First of all, and you've heard me say this already, open, honest, transparent vulnerability. If that's not part of the culture of the organization, you can't change. People have to be able to speak up. They have to be able to be heard and listened to without potential punitive repercussions, right? And so we need to have organizations that are open, honest, transparent, and vulnerable. I don't talk to my clients about change. I talk to my clients about pivoting, because pivoting is just 2 or 3 degrees of pivot can have a significant impact on the direction that the company is going. So when we talk about change, I look at change as opportunity. And we don't speak of change as change and detriment. We speak of change as, here's an opportunity. How can we capitalize on it?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I was in my Vistage group yesterday, and we were talking about kind of blue ocean strategy, kind of what are these opportunities that are sitting on the horizon that we're not capitalizing on. And it was great exercise going through kind of like, where are the opportunities? And it was just that. It was opportunities to pivot, opportunities to serve our customers in a different way, and not saying we don't do that, to saying like, well, we could do that. What would it take to serve you in this way? It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about what it means to be a certified EOS implementer. Help us. I don't think I've had any guest talk about all the different designations that are in that sort of journey.
Yeah. So first of all, with regards to EOS, we are all trained to offer the same thing.
Okay.
We are trained to offer EOS in a purity way.
Yeah.
Pure EOS. And every EOS implementer, regardless of how long they've been with EOS, from a 6-month implementer all the way down to a 10-year implementer, we all teach the same thing. The difference between the three categories of EOS implementers is at the very top, there are expert implementers. It's driven by the number of sessions that you have done. 500 sessions, you're now an expert implementer. A certified implementer is up to 500 sessions. And professional implementer is 0 to, I think it's 56 sessions. That's the only difference between the different designations. Now, what makes implementers really different are their personalities, their backgrounds, their experience, where they've come from, what their personal life is like. That's really what makes the difference of an EOS implementer. And there are certain clients that I don't fit with because my personality doesn't fit with their personality. And I will be very happy to refer a potential client to another implementer who's got the personality that fits that particular prospect.
All right. You introduced it. Let's talk about personality. Who is Marshall Krupp below the surface? Like, if you weren't able to tell people what you do, tell us who you are.
So, who am I? On the DISC assessment, I'm a DI. So I'm results driven. You know, I am aggressive, assertive. I'm an entrepreneur. On the other hand, the I part of me is I'm social. I like people. I like being around people. I can put the two together, the assertiveness and the social relationship. So that's on the DI personality. In reality, I'm a teddy bear. Although people call me a bulldog of how I approach things, I am very aggressive in terms of how I approach things. I'm very assertive at how I approach things. So my personality comes out in how I show up with my clients, how I show up with my family, and so forth and so on. I'm a workaholic. So that's part of my personality. Loving my job, loving what I do, that's part of whom I am, and that's my life and how I show up. So those are the kinds of things that...
When you say that some people like you, some people don't like you, you know, and you're happy to introduce other people, like what would be some of the historic things where you're like, I tend to not jive with these types of people, or they don't jive with me, vice versa?
So I come from a behavioral style my whole life that surrounds itself around accountability. I expect people to fulfill their commitments. Right? You make an agreement, you fulfill your commitments. If you don't fulfill your commitments, you lose trust. Right? So that's where I come from. Lots of businesses have a problem holding others accountable or being accountable themselves. When you're in a situation with a client, clients will find themselves pushing themselves away from someone who holds them accountable. And I hold my clients accountable. So there are some prospective clients who don't want that kind of environment around them. So that's an example.
So that's interesting. I want to come back to accountability because I think that's we probably we could talk about that for a long time. I love the topic of accountability. No one holding me accountable. I hate that, but I like holding other people accountable.
I'll tell you in a moment. No one can hold someone accountable. True accountability does not have to do with holding someone accountable. True accountability is where someone brings to my attention and awareness that I'm out of integrity with the commitment that I made. Only I can hold myself accountable at that point. So you can bring it to my attention, but you can't really hold me accountable. Only I can hold myself accountable.
That's good. I like that. We have this thing at Titus where we deeply believe that if you're going to hire somebody for a job, you need to be really clear and quantifiably clear what does success look like in that job and any job. Because if you're going to pay somebody a quantifiable amount of money, what do we give? What's the exchange? We do. If you hired a contractor to come and do something in your home, you would say, "What's the quote?" And then, if you are vague on what the outcome is, there's going to be a problem.
Correct.
If you're very specific of what you're paying for, then you can decide whether you're happy with the project or not happy with the project. Yeah, but in employee relationships, we don't do that very well. Most companies
we don't. I find it very interesting that entrepreneurs invest in a business, they invest in an activity to get a return on investment, right? They invest to get a return. When we hire employees, we're doing the same thing. We're investing in the employee. We better get a return, because if we're not getting a return, we're wasting our money.
Yeah. So talk about that. How do you've made it clear you can't hold somebody accountable. They have to hold themselves accountable.
Correct.
Personal accountability.
Correct.
And so how do you do that? How do you create a culture like that?
So the first thing to the path of accountability is making sure that you have agreements. We have to have agreements, implicit or explicit. Now, when we hire someone, our job description is part of the agreement. You're agreeing to join our company based upon the contract that we have, which is your job description, right? So if you fail to meet your job description, I'm going to bring it to your attention. When I bring it to your attention, I'm seeking a behavioral change. If you continue to repeat the same thing over and over again, that poor behavior, then probably you don't belong in the business.
Yeah.
You should be let go, right? But you have to have agreements to have an accountability culture. It can be implicit or explicit. I use the example of a driver's license, right? Yeah. We get a driver's license. We've signed an agreement with the state of in this state, the state of California.
Yeah.
We've signed an agreement that we will comply with the laws. When we don't comply with the laws, we are made aware of it by a highway patrolman pulling us over on the freeway and saying, "Are you aware that you just violated the agreement that you had?"
Yeah.
Now, in that case, there is a punitive result to it, which is probably the writing of a ticket.
Yeah. Unless you say, "I identify as a judge."
Unless you've talked yourself out of the, the ticket.
We can edit that. Anyway. All right. So, okay. Implicit, explicit. Give an example of implicit like your expectations.
An implicit agreement is you and I decide to go to lunch, right?
Okay.
We have an agreement. The agreement has to be very specific. So not only are we going to lunch, I need to tell you when we're going to lunch, what time you need to be there, what time we're going to be there, where we're going to be.
Yeah.
All right. It's a really clear understanding of what the relationship we have between us, which is an implicit agreement, right?
Okay.
If our time is 12 o'clock on Friday at TGI Fridays, and you show up at 12:01, you've just violated the agreement.
Okay.
You're out of integrity with the agreement that you made with me, which said you would be there by 12.
Okay.
And every time you violate an agreement, there's consequences of violating the agreement. There's an impact on you. There's an impact on me as a result of violating that agreement.
Okay, so I'm going to translate that to an employment agreement. Implicit would be business development representative. It is implied that you're going to build business development relationships. Explicit would be bring in 10 new customers equaling $1 million in revenue.
So actually, no.
Okay.
An implicit agreement is something where you don't sign a document.
Okay.
Okay? An explicit agreement is where you sign a document. So, for example, if I did an offering paper to you, offering letter to you to have you join my company, you'd sign that offering letter.
Yep.
We have an explicit agreement.
Okay, so this is great. So explicit agreement it's not actually, you can't technically measure success just because it's explicit.
Exactly. The agreement has to be detailed.
Right.
There has got to be everything that you expect of the individual stated either in the explicit agreement or in the implicit agreement.
Brilliant. So here's a lot of if you think of any relational conflict, it comes down to unmet expectations.
Correct.
Right? I mean, it's fair roughly.
Pretty much does.
Okay. The conflict happens because somebody was upset or both parties were upset because expectations weren't met. So you could say, I explicitly read, or it was very explicit that my job description was build relationships, work the territory, have lunches with prospects, and whatever. Like, it's explicit there, and I did all of those things, and somebody goes, the manager says, I'm terminating you because of lack of performance. You're like, I explicitly read,
yes,
and I did all of those things. I did everything on my job description, and they still fired me. Well, because we didn't actually show the expectation of the outcome versus the input.
Absolutely. In most agreements, we don't have measurements. We have expectations of interpretation. We interpret what those expectations are. Until we have KPIs, metrics, or measurements identified in every agreement, it's hard to understand what is really expected of me. So if, for example, a salesperson has the requirement to go contact contact prospects, that's one thing. But I put explicitly that they have to contact 10 prospects per day. If they only do 9, they have failed to fulfill the commitment that they made to me.
Right.
And that's how you determine whether a person is successful or not, when you have metrics, KPIs, measurements.
Yeah, big time. Well, I mean, you're talking my language here. I mean, this is what we live and breathe, right?
Right.
I think we're the only company in the world who guarantees the people we recommend that by their anniversary date, they're going to accomplish 100% of what you hired them to do. Because we're recommending this person as somebody who can do this, they will do this, and they want to do this. But guess what? Our guarantee or our promise only works if you are explicit about and quantifiable about the 3 to 5 things that you need them to get done. And it is very, very clear. And then we will put a system in place to how we're going to measure that, where they know where they stand at any given time. Which I think is super, super important, because if you have a relationship with somebody and there's unmet expectations, you got to talk about, hey, I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed, I'm upset, and I'm trying to figure out why I am, and I realized that I thought this was going to happen. You say lunch. Okay, we agreed to have lunch and be there at noon. You said lunchtime. I'm like, right. I said lunchtime, but lunchtime to me is 1 and lunchtime to you is noon.
Exactly.
Like, you're disappointed because I didn't show up on time, but we didn't actually say what time.
Correct. So, and my expectation is different than your expectation.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing that's interesting in accountability. There are usually 2 responses when someone is out of integrity to a commitment. The first response is an excuse. They give you an excuse. The second is a reason. Now people say, wait a minute, aren't excuses and reasons the same thing? No. Excuses are things that I have control over. So for example, if I'm to meet you for lunch and I get a phone call at 11:45 and that phone call runs longer than 15 minutes and I'm late because of that, that's an excuse, because I could have chosen to hang up on the phone or get off the phone earlier. However, same situation, I'm on the phone, there's an earthquake, I end up, under debris, I can't make it to lunch because of the earthquake. I didn't have any control over that. So in my world, there's no such thing as excuses. I don't allow excuses. I only allow reasons.
Okay.
So if you come to me and tell me you're late for lunch and you give me an excuse, you're out of integrity. If you come to me and say, I have a legitimate reason for not showing up, okay, I understand that. It's a delicate balance between the two, but it's really a significant thing to understand when you're trying to create a culture of accountability.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's you have a high bar.
I have a high bar.
And that would be part of your DNA personality. Where did that come from?
My dad.
Yeah.
Clearly, his way of living, he taught me there are no such things as excuses, period. I didn't understand it. As a child growing up, you don't understand that.
Yeah.
Right? But that was the high bar. There are no excuses. You should do everything that you can do in order to commit and then follow through on the commitment.
Yeah. What did that look like as a kid for you? Like that sounds like very structured, or it's holding you accountable, okay? Or you must hold yourself accountable. Sorry, no one can hold you accountable. But
exactly.
Like, what was that like as a child?
Well, here's the thing that I learned as a child. I learned that failing to fulfill your commitments resulted in punishment. Most people who hear the word accountability think punishment. Okay? If you hold me accountable, and I don't do something, then I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to be punished.
Yeah.
Accountability is not about punishment. We learn that as children, but it's not about punishment. Really what accountability is about is changing the behavior.
Yeah.
Okay? So when I make you aware that you're out of integrity with a commitment you made to me, what I'm really trying to do is get you to change your behavior so that we can have a more trusting relationship.
Right. All right. I'm listening to this going, where are your regrets? When you look back and you're like, I have not lived, I'd be willing to bet that you've failed on this standard for yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay. Big regret. What's an example relationally where you're like, man, if I could undo that one, I have failed majorly.
And I know a lot of guys go through this, probably more guys than women. When you get a divorce and you're early with a child, 1, 2 years old, and you get a divorce, and for some reason the relationship with the child sort of gets a bigger gap over the years. You look back at that and say, God, I was out of integrity. I was still the father. I should have still been there. It was the right thing to do. I didn't do it. Didn't hold myself accountable to what I was responsible for, right?
Right.
I have a daughter right now, right?
Yeah.
She's 50. She's going to be 50 this year. Right?
Whoa.
Yeah, she's going to be 50 this year.
Wow.
And we have the best relationship now. But when I look back during her years of growth, I wasn't there for her, right? So there's an example. And I could show you hundreds of examples where I wasn't at the high level of integrity around my commitments, right? For me, my moment when I started to realize this, believe it or not, was when I was 50 years old. 50 years old, I recognized there was something that I wasn't doing that wasn't right. And I recognized it, and I pivoted at that point. And today, pretty much you can say I hold myself accountable. Now, do I fail? Absolutely. There are times when I fail. Everybody fails. It's part of life. It's part of being human, right?
Yeah. Now, hearing you, I'm processing through my own journeys. I think historically, when I've kind of held a really high bar on something, like this is really important. Like even at Titus, we talk about our values and what sets our standard of excellence. And we hold people to a very high bar on that, of all of our values, our core values as a company. And we're really clear on the definition of those as well, so the expectation's clear. And then I fail, and I miss the mark, or I completely, I don't know what just happened there, but I completely violated the integrity of what I'm saying. Now what? Now what do I do? And I think just even that process of recognition that I'm a human, recognition of my own, the humanity of failing, of missing the mark, and needing other people's mercy. And depending on your worldview, for me, I need God's mercy because I really screwed this thing up, and I'm caught off guard with it. But it causes me to be more gracious and merciful with other people.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And here's what I've come to realize. I'm human. The people around me are human.
Yeah.
The more humility I have, the greater I can be there for others.
Yeah.
The more I recognize that I can be empathetic to them, I can be more empathetic to myself too.
Right.
So I can fail and still pick myself up and say, let's move on. Let's forget the past. I live in the moment. I truly do live in the moment.
Yeah.
And when you live in the moment, it's amazing how much is going on around you, right?
Right.
That you could gain from. And as I said earlier on, challenges, problems, issues, failures are all opportunities.
Yeah.
They're all opportunities. So if we can learn from them, we won't repeat them potentially. But even if we do repeat them, we can go back and say, well, what did I learn from the first time that I can apply now?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if someone consistently misses the mark, then, you know, the sense of accountability, but really clear on 12 o'clock's lunchtime, as you say, TGI Fridays, 12 o'clock on Friday. Last month, you came at 12:01. I mean, this is your bar. I'm like 12:01. I'd be fine with.
Yeah. So,
but 12:01. Okay, next month. Like, hey, I really want. Let's. Time is precious for each of us. Let's start on time. And next month rolls around, 12:15. You're like, didn't we talk about this? You know, and if it's consistent, I totally get that. Then saying, hey, listen, we're gonna have to figure something out here because that's part of the expectation of our relationship. It's a work relationship. I think the dynamic of being gracious and kind and holding people accountable is really tough for leaders, for many leaders who are connected to people on a heart level. How do we navigate through? And I've sat in many meetings like, oh, that person's not coming through. They're not delivering this. I sat in a meeting the other day and someone was saying, I don't know how to hold this person accountable because there's so much. I mean, you mentioned divorce. They were going through a divorce. It's like, now what do I do?
So I've developed an 8-step process.
Okay.
Of how you go about holding someone accountable.
Okay.
And it works.
You can't hold someone accountable.
Huh?
You can't hold someone accountable.
No, it's a process for going through the process of holding a high level of accountability. Let me share this. I had a company for 33 years.
Yeah.
At any one time, I had about 40 people working for me. I never fired an employee in the entire 33 years. Never fired an employee.
Okay.
I lost a lot of employees. A lot of employees chose to leave because they were no longer a fit, but I never had to fire an employee. I never had to say, you are fired. I'd have a conversation with them, and I would share with them that they have 2 options. Option 1 is you can conform. You can fulfill the expectations we have of you. You can behave accordingly, and so forth and so on. Or you can choose to leave. It's a choice. Okay? I'm not making the choice for you. You're going to make the choice for yourself. You either conform or there's the door.
So what's the difference between that? I mean, you talk about hire, slow, fire, fast. How do you navigate that with accountability in this situation?
Yeah, so I don't use the term fire. Right?
Okay. So you never fired anyone because you don't use the term?
No, it's not that I don't use the term. It's that I don't make the choice.
Oh,
I don't make the decision to fire.
Okay.
The employee makes the decision.
Yeah, okay.
All right? I give them the option. You can fulfill the expectation. You can perform the way I expect you to perform. You can do whatever the agreement we have, you can fulfill the intent of the agreement.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to say, I don't want to fulfill the intent of the agreement, and therefore you choose to leave. You have the option. I'm not making the decision for you.
Yeah.
It's a unique perspective from an employer's view of what's going on. Because most of the time when we fire an employee, we, the employer, become the target of the victim. The employee is the victim. Yeah. We are the target of the victim now who has now been fired.
Okay.
When I give the option to someone to make a choice, they're making the choice. I'm not making the choice. I'm no longer the target of the situation.
Yeah. I think it's probably, At a root level, I think it's probably very similar to how we are at Titus. Every single person in the company knows what's expected of them at any given time, and that's the foundation of the employment. It's performance. We hired you to get a job done. You should know how you're doing in that job. There's the getting the job done, but there's also how you get the job done, interacting with other team members, and that's where our values come in and our DNA and behaviors and things like that. And then there's the skill, like we want to grow in your skills so you can do a more excellent job. So there's that part, but deep belief that people have a choice of where they work, and we want people to want to work with us. So then there's suddenly like,
correct.
Let's peel this back now and go, but we deeply care about you, your personal life. You're going through a divorce. You're sick. You've got family members who are sick. How do we compassionately and empathetically care for you in this process while also saying we're a high-performance company? And that balance, I think, is really, really tricky because we are in a day and an age where there's so much abundance of choice. Everything, I mean, we kind of joke, I mean, it's just choice for absolutely everything. I was talking this morning about a podcast of getting an Uber, and you're like, I can say, before I even get in the car, this is what the temperature I want to be. Before I even get here, I want to let you know, don't talk to me. Like, I can switch the thing to the right. I don't want anyone to speak to me. Like, so, like, okay, this is getting crazy now, you know. But that how I want you to interact with me, that's a part of our normal culture in the States anyway. Like, people suddenly will communicate, this is how I'd like you to talk to me, this is how I'd like you to address me, this is how I want you to interact with me. And it's now in the employment environment, it's kind of like all of these kind of expectations of how I'm to be treated as the employee, and employers are kind of like handcuffed going, golly, do I have a say here? You know, I'm the one paying you. And so I think we need to be really clear. First and foremost, here's what I need you to get done. Okay, as long as you're doing that, all of these, I'm going to try and create this wonderful environment, a great culture. I want to treat you in the way you need to be treated. I want to be respectful of you and things like that. All of those other things. Here's the employment agreement. First and foremost, what you need to get done, and then here's how I'm going to treat you, and here's how you're going to treat me. If we're really clear on those expectations around what the culture looks like, and really show those things, I think it's going to be beautiful. And I think most employers would want to get to that point.
Absolutely. And let me share this. Most job announcements, most job postings do not have two things in them. The one thing is they don't set forth the goals of the company. Every job announcement should identify what the goals of the company are, because we are hiring the employee to fulfill the goals of the company.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the core values. I'm sorry. I meant core values, not goals.
Sorry.
The core values of the company.
Okay, back up, say it again.
All right. Every job announcement should have the core values of the company identified.
Yep.
Clearly identified, because the expectation we have is that the employee, the prospect, will become an employee that fulfills those core values. Mm-hmm. Absolutely critical. Most job descriptions don't identify the core values of a company. Should be right out there in front. The second thing that most announcements don't have is the measurements by which we will determine your success. We list all these tasks. We want you to do this and this and this, and everybody says, yes, I will do that. But they have no idea what the expectation we have of them in terms of the measurables.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Every job description should have that.
Oh, we call it a performance profile.
Performance profile.
Like,
right?
what are we going to hold you accountable for, and what can you expect from a culture? I mean, I'm with you. I 100% agree with that. We have, I mean, we do it in everything. We have marriage vows. Like, here are my vows to you. These are the things I'm going to commit to, okay? Until death do us part. We don't do that in employment. You know, here you go. Here's the salary until death do us part. But it's like, here's the agreement. Here's what the expectation is. It brings so much more peace to people. You know, one of the most stressful things in life is there's death in the family, moving house, and moving job. Like, moving jobs is one of the top 3 stresses in life. And if you peel that back and say, okay, why is it so stressful? It is expectation. I know somebody has expectations of me, and I don't know what they are.
Yep.
And so the sort of that integration or onboarding period, like who's who in the company and what's their influential role here, and who do I need to suck up to? Because of expectations. I don't know who.
Right.
And so the more we can bring clarity around expectation, who the relationships are and what they mean to you, and who are you reporting to, who are you, the work that you do, who does it have an impact on? If I don't come through and deliver my stuff, look at all of the people that I influence. My missing the mark would impact these people. They can't get their job done. You need to know those things because it brings actually clarity, brings peace.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when you look at EOS, one of the values of EOS is that it's built around making clear what our expectations are.
Yeah.
You know, we have the vision component of EOS. It's 2 pages, right? It clearly states this is what we expect this company is going to do in the future, right? We have the right people, right seats portion of EOS. We have the data. We know data doesn't lie, right? So data becomes part of how we run our company. Yeah. We expect the data to show whether we're failing or we're succeeding. That's part of our expectations. Dealing with issues and getting to the root cause, right?
Yeah.
Our expectation is we are not going to deal on the surface. We're going to dig deep and deep and deep and deep and get to a point where we get to the root cause, and that's what we're going to deal with. The issues are simply the symptoms of what's going wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then processes. Process is all about expectations,
Yep.
right? We're going to develop a process. It's expected that everybody will follow the process. And then ultimately the concept of traction, meaning we're going to execute on a regular basis and we're going to hold each other accountable to make sure that our vision is fulfilled.
Yeah.
And it's all driven by what are our expectations of the people who are on the leadership team, and as it folds down into the rest of the company, everybody else in the company.
Yeah.
So you're right.
So somebody's listening to this, they're a business owner, business leader, and they're like, I like this concept. I'm interested in what Marshall's talking about, this whole topic of accountability. We need more of that here. And he just introduced a whole bunch of other things, these process and data and accountability, and right people, right seats. Where do they come to find you?
Well, they can do 2 things. They can look me up on www.eosworldwide.com and look up Marshall Krupp.
Okay.
Or they can reach me at www.peerexecutiveboards.com.
Peer Executive Boards, okay.
Peerexecutiveboards with an S.com. Or they can clearly call you and you can refer them to me.
There you go. Sounds good. Well, it's good to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming down. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been wonderful, Jonathan.
Yeah, great.
I wish you all the best in your ventures going forward.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.